Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low Magazine? Because 4Low Magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on a newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Kevin Carey. Kevin is a past president of Pirates of the Rubicon. He was a big influence in wheeling when I got back to Placerville, California after being in Utah. And he's worked with land use groups and veteran groups, been a competitor. So we're going to talk to Kevin about his early days and where he's at now. So Kevin, thank you for coming on board and sharing your life history with us and our listeners.
Oh, thanks, Rich. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah. So let's get started right from the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Well, I'll make it as quick as I can. So,
quickness is not a necessary thing.
Yeah, I was born in 1968 I was born in the Bay Area, and my dad and mom lived at that time in Oakland, and my dad worked in San Francisco. Shortly after that, a couple years after I was born, we moved up to Westwood, California, which a lot of your listeners probably don't know where that's at, Lake Almanor in Westwood. And my dad, after being a stockbroker, decided he wanted to build houses. So we went up there and did that until I was a young teenager. So we lived up there and owned a small bowling alley. And Westwood and Lake Almanor is really pretty up there, but I got to go back and visit. So that's where I grew up as a young kid. And then once I was in my very, very early teens, 12, 13, they sold that bowling alley. And my dad decided that it was a good idea for the whole family to move to Alaska.
Oh, so, Alaska, huh?
Yeah, to Anchorage. And because we owned the bowling alley, my dad found a place he could get a job up there, and so we drove in my dad's 3/4-ton Suburban up through California all the way through Canada on the Alcan Highway.
Nice.
And went to Anchorage, Alaska, and lived there for about a year. And then we returned to the Bay Area, and my dad got a job again, and we bought a house in San Leandro.
So when he was up in Alaska, did he work the pipeline?
No, he didn't. He was working on managing a bowling alley.
Oh, okay.
In Anchorage, So did that. Then we moved back to the Bay Area. My dad got back into business, stocks and bonds, and we bought a nice house in San Leandro, which is right next to Oakland.
Right.
And San Leandro at the time was a really nice town. And that's where I went to middle school and then went to high school and graduated from there. So then a whole nother part of my life story starts,
So when was your first exposure to vehicles? We won't necessarily get right into off-road, but go ahead.
It was when I was young. My dad was always into Porsches and mostly Lotuses. So
wow.
Lotus, he was really into those kind of sports cars and used to autocross. So he had a couple of Lotus Europas, which were really cool cars. And then we had older cars, a 56 Packard, a 56 T-Bird he bought my mom. So we always had a lot of vehicles around. In fact, my first car was a 1958 Carmen Ghia I bought from a neighbor across the street from my house. It was in his garage.
That's
The
awesome.
Volkswagen. Yeah, really cool.
So in high school in San Leandro, did you participate in sports, or were you more of a social club member, or just kind of did your own thing?
I had kind of all of the above, and I'm not into sports, but it didn't rule my life. And I was really into BMX riding and freestyle BMX riding. So that means like half pipes and quarter pipes and skate parks on a BMX bike. So I had a lot of really high-end BMX bikes at the time. And there used to be a group of riders called the Curb Dogs, and they were out of the Bay Area in San Francisco. There was a couple of skater guys that would hang around with us too, and Joey Lopes, and just some other bigger names in the back in the day doing that kind of stuff. So I got into that, and I did that till I got that Carmen Ghia, and then all my, started working on cars, and that kind of took over.
It's amazing how with some people, getting that first car and being able to drive kind of changes their life and the things that they did growing up. I'm the same way. My first vehicle was a 54 Volkswagen Bug, and as soon as I got my driver's license, at that time I was in a ski club going from the Bay Area up to Squaw Valley every weekend, and that was the end of the ski club. It was really the end of pretty much everything organized. Including scouts and everything, because man, I was like wind in my hair, got freedom,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us in this industry, the same thing happened. So it's interesting. So then, what was your first off-road vehicle?
Well, my first off-road vehicle was a 1985 4Runner.
Okay. What year did that come in?
Oh, geez. Way later.
Way later. Okay, then let's come back to that.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I joined the Army, and that was 1988. And then immediately went to basic training and advanced training, and became a military police officer in the Army. And I got deployed to Desert Shield and Desert Storm. So went over to Iraq, and we took prisoners of war, and I did some traffic accidents even happened in wartime,
Right.
So did that, a bunch of other details along that time in the Gulf War was, to be a bodyguard for, to name a few, Steve Martin and General Schwarzkopf, who was the commanding general for the Gulf troops over there. So that was pretty awesome to do that.
Well, I know General Schwarzkopf. Steve Martin, the comedian?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Steve Martin came over with his wife and with the USO to entertain the troops, So
A wild and crazy guy.
He is, man. He's my favorite comedian too, so I was honored to get to work with him,
That's really cool.
Yep.
So tell me some of the things that happened over there, say with with them, or what kind of experiences were that? You don't have to get into anything really hardcore or anything.
It's basically our job at the time was to be an escort and just escort them. So when I went to Desert Shield, when we left, I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, the 101st Airborne Division.
Okay.
So I was already air assault and airborne qualified, which in the military, that's really unique and cool. And I escorted, me and a private and I was in charge of detail to escort, I think it was almost $4 million over to the Gulf in cash. So did that, even when we go to war, we need money, right? So,
yep.
So did that, and then hooked back up to my unit, and we stayed there for about 9.5 months, 10 months. And we took, thousands and thousands of prisoners of war, and during brutal wartime, during, when it was quieter time, we'd still have all these prisoners and evaluate if they could be interviewed and give us more intel and pass them along to the intel people. So, that was a long, long time ago. I'm proud that I did it. And, but wow, it's hard to think back over all that time,
Right. So, so was that meaning that you were military police?
I was military police qualified. That was my job in the Army. So in the Army, everybody has a job, right? A mechanic,
Right.
a cook. So yeah, I was a military police officer. Yep.
Okay.
Specifically a traffic accident investigator, which kind of was one of the first things that got me into understanding vehicles, right? If that makes any sense, vehicle dynamics and all of those things, weight and speed and crush to bang theory of metal, those things all come into traffic accidents. And then I got to understand vehicles very well,
Yep, makes sense.
Yep.
So then, how long did you spend in the military?
I had a total of 9 years. So after Desert Storm, I came home. That's 1992. And then I joined the reserves in Hayward, California, where I was living, and stayed in the reserves for 8 years total. So I have about 9 years in total, 10 years in the military.
That's awesome. Thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm proud to do it.
So from the military, when you get out of there, what did you step into? Did you step into law enforcement or something else?
that was always the thought that I would, right? So I went to college and took courses in administration of justice, and during that time when I started taking those courses, I was able to get a job in Hayward for a company that was doing cabling. Cabling at the time was, simple, but becoming more complicated. And that was cabling for phone systems, for computers, for computer printers. And that's when this network cabling was being designed and developed in our time frame, right? Okay. So high speed cabling that could handle a quarter of the speeds we have now, or even less. But it was the preamble for what we're doing in fiber optics, and we installed fiber optics everywhere. So I became a manager over time, and started running these projects that I was working on as a newbie. I got my younger brother involved in it, and his best friend from San Leandro, and working in San Francisco to San Jose at Intel to, it could be Microsoft, it could be any of these, software companies you might know about now or have gone away, but we were working in their buildings for a long, long time in the Bay Area,
Awesome.
Yep.
So did you finally get your degree, or did you?
No, I'm very close. I'm still close. No, I didn't. And over the course of that time for years, I was really good at what I was doing, but I got my brother involved and his friend, and they became leaders and became young managers. And I kind of veered away and got in, because I was military police, I kind of got into, in our business, or in the business now, it's called access control. So I got into access control, which is how you get in and out of buildings, and card readers and motion detection and cameras. And it's very specific technical way to perform security for corporate businesses, right?
Right.
And I got into that, and I never went back to voice and data, even though I knew it. I just somehow got into that line of work and never looked back. Over the course of all that time, became a consultant and started to write my own specifications and run projects for customers that were brand new to the close of those projects. So that's what I did for a long time, and became a consultant and a technical writer. And that's what I did for, 25 years. And now I'm retired, but yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I got to travel the country and work in places that are just awesome. I worked in Washington, D.C. I've worked for Amtrak Police Department, drove and flown all over this country many, many times doing that type of work.
Excellent. That's sounds like a really good base for getting out and
Yeah,
experiencing.
yep, and seeing the world for sure.
Absolutely. So from that point, I know you're retired now from that, but how did that all evolve? Living down in the Bay Area, end up getting into off road.
So we'd be doing those projects in the Bay Area. My older brother, Scott Carey, he was into four-wheeling, and he had a CJ7. And my dad got into it and had a little CJ5 and lived up in Yuba City. That's where my parents had moved to. So, my dad's like, you should come up and do this once in a while. My older brother's like, oh, you should come with me. But I love my older brother, but he makes me uncomfortable driving. So my dad really got into it and just really went head over heels with his little CJ5. And so I wheeled in the Jeeps with them for a couple of years, and I decided, I'm like, I want something bigger. And my brother's like, well, some people at the time, he's like, a few people, four-wheel these Toyotas, but, they're not very reliable, whatever. That's a lie, because it's probably the most reliable off-road vehicle. But, and I'll come back around to that in a minute. But so that was my first four-wheeler, and started to modify it over time with the simple spring lifts and fighting steering and gearing. And at the time, they didn't even have crossover steering for these vehicles developed yet. So, you put limited slips. There's no ARBs then. Detroit lockers were developed, but not for Toyotas yet. So, yeah, it was just kind of a learning curve, and come on up and meet them and go to the Rubicon. And I started spending more and more time around up here,
So then that all morphed into becoming a member of Pirates of the Rubicon?
Yeah, so when I met my ex-wife, now Marin's mom, well, I met her in Folsom when I was living up there and working, and we moved to the Bay Area, and I worked for a while. We got married and had our daughter, Marin. Marin's now 19. And worked down there, and I still had that 4Runner, so I'd work on that, go four-wheeling once in a while. When I would come up, I started to meet people four-wheeling, and I met the Pirates, and, and would come up and meet them, and they were very notorious at the time, Rich. Very notorious, right? And so we would, once I was a prospect and I got approved, then you had to run your initiation to get in the club through little sluice box at the time was incredibly difficult to get through. It's like a little hammer section, and had to run that blindfolded and have a spotter in the passenger seat. I wouldn't say that you were forced to be inebriated, but you were. And so that's how I passed that, and I got into the Pirates. And then over the course of 10 years, just four-wheeled. And Lance Clifford, who started Pirate4x4.com as a chat room for our club, that exploded over time with development of the internet and ads and marketing into a business for Lance, right?
Yep.
So I helped him with some of it. He had help from others, for Eric Linker and Camo. And, the club was still the club, and I became the president for a couple of years. And I talked with Lance, and I just had decided, Lance had already decided, and Bob Rogie had decided, you know what, I'm going to get out of the club because I love four-wheeling, but I'm tired of the dynamics, and, of being in a club, right?
Right.
And my daughter wanted to get her out four-wheeling too. So anyway, I resigned from the club, and of course, they're still all my friends, and I have stickers and stuff, and they want me to put the stickers on my rig. I don't know. Yeah, so that really started my drive into four-wheeling, which is strange for me because I've never really been a gearhead or a motorhead, but I love technical driving. And over that course of time, doing that four-wheeling, I got into, because Lance was involved, and I get into competition spotting, right?
Yep.
And did that for 4 or 5 years with a couple of different drivers, and most notably Jeff Mello. And I was just telling my fiance, we took the world championship in Las Vegas in front of the convention center. I think I made, $17,000 rock crawling that year. Go out and compete for a weekend, come back, get first, cash that in, and not Lance, but Jeff and I would, split the winnings, right?
Yep.
He'd keep all the product winnings, but we'd split the cash winnings. And so it helped build up my rig a little bit, but it really got me out and about, and I got to be introduced to a lot of people and travel a lot of places to compete. So that was kind of fun. A lot of fun.
So name the drivers that you spotted for besides Mello.
Jeff Mello, Bob Standage. Remember that name?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. So I spotted for Bob Standage, too, for another world championship. And his spotter at the time ended up taking the wheel, and I spotted for him. And we got another first that year somewhere. I can't remember. Unfortunately, all my trophies are lost. A moving company lost all of my trophies.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. So remember those big trophies, Rich, that were big polished plastic?
Yep.
Very tall. So, yeah, all those went away, which is a shame. Yeah, I spotted for Bob and for Jeff.
Did you spot for Jody?
Yes, thank you for bringing up his name. Yeah, for Jody Everding. Yeah, sure did. So Jody and I became champs, too, in a modified class for 37s. Yeah, so Jody and Everding and I went from zero to hero in that car of his. And I think at the time, the last year we were competing, he had the rowdiest motor in rock crawling. I think he had 540 horsepower.
Yeah, that Brodak or something.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Yeah. So, yeah, we ended up racing that in King of the Hammers,
Yeah, I remember that car up in Goldendale, Washington, trying to get through a crack line and just creating the biggest dust storm ever. And he was just in the throttle, it seemed like, for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think that people had seen a motor like that in rock crawling yet.
I don't think they had either. I mean, there were some close ones, like some of the Campbell Cadillac motors and stuff early in the day, but nothing built like that one.
No, it was insane. It was and kind of uncontrollable for rock crawling. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about the Rubicon and the Pirates and the, you mentioned, being pretty notorious at the time. I remember that. That's right around 2000 is when I moved back to the end of 2000 is when I moved back to Placerville area, but I had met Rogie and Lance through the competitions, and they'd stayed at my house in Cedar City. And so when I came back, I just fell in with you guys, not as a club member or anything like that, but just somebody that hung out and went on some of the trips. And some good times. There was some good times.
Oh, yeah, for sure, good times.
In those early days especially.
Yeah, we'd have our initiation inside, on the Rubicon, historically, through little sluice box, high noon, and you're blindfolded and da-da-da. We do our club runs on the Rubicon and have a lot of fun, and we do a spectator event, once a year, and everybody could come. But other than that, it was really club runs and, club members and their wives. And no children were allowed to come, and you're not supposed to bring animals. There was I don't know, all these rules the Pirates had at the time. Through the course of all of those years, I started wheeling with veterans more, and which I'm a combat veteran, right? So I ran into a few people that, a guy from Florida, Jason Hadlick, and he said, I'm doing this Wheelers for the Wounded thing, and I want to come to the, wheel once we talked, because I want to four-wheel the Rubicon. I'm like, well, have you ever been there? He's like, no. And I'm like, well, tell you what, because he and I are both combat soldiers, and I said, why don't you let me help you plan your trip to the Rubicon? I'm aligned with this club, and at the time I was kind of getting out of the Pirates, but not doing as much with them. And so I helped him organize and plan his first Wheelers for the Wounded trip on the Rubicon. And got veterans arranged here and aligned. And that was a long time ago, man. That was, 12 years ago now. So that went on for years. And then I formed Wheelers for the Wounded of California, which blossomed into Wheelers for the Wounded of Nevada, formed a nonprofit with a handful of people, Eric Schmaltz and Art Crofts, who's Brian Croft's father.
Yep.
And a few other people. And so had done that for, 12 years, and had events every year. And we took hundreds and hundreds of veterans up to the Rubicon Trail every year and fed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner and gave them the experience of rock crawling, right?
That's excellent.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun and a lot of good times for a lot of good people. And we've lost a lot of those veterans now, and not a lot of them, but handfuls of them, because they're Korean War, Vietnam, and even some Afghanistan and Iraq vets because of cancer and some other exposure to, chemicals and other things. So I was glad we did that. And Wheelers for the Wounded is not functional like it was, but there's still groups of people that Simon Huber takes veterans up to the Rubicon, and we have money that was left over in the organization. And so Eric helps funnel some of that money, like to Simon, so that they can pull off a weekend of four-wheeling, and not as significant as we used to do, but it still shows veterans a great weekend and lets them go camping and driving for a little bit,
Excellent.
So, yeah, that's where that's at.
Did you get involved with Friends of the Rubicon? I know that the club did big cleanups. I was involved in a few of those.
Yeah, we did, and the Friends of the Rubicon developed through, four-wheelers on the trail. And that was the preamble to the Rubicon Trail Foundation, right?
Yep.
So, which I'm a founder on the Rubicon Trail Foundation and also the Friends of the Rubicon. But so those organizations or groups of people were started to help protect the Rubicon Trail, more so than the pirates like we used to do on our big cleanups, because we do a cleanup every year and get hundreds and hundreds of people up there and really do a great cleanup. But, it was always, I won't say always, the more the concern to some people at the time was more partying and less cleanup. So we really wanted to concentrate on the cleanup. And so that's how these Friends of the Rubicon Trail Foundation was started. If Friends of the Rubicon, if they're still around, it's news to me. The Rubicon Trail Foundation is around. I resigned as a director a long time ago, and I don't hear much from them. They bought some property on the Rubicon with donation money they had, and I've never even been there, and I'm a founding director. But the El Dorado County has really stepped up to the plate to take care of the trail, and that's taken a long time. Vicki Standers is in charge of that, manages the Rubicon Trail for the El Dorado County. She's really taken over and done a wonderful job now. So the Rubicon Trail is well cared for, managed, and can be enjoyed by almost everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to say protected,
Yes,
at least for our rights to be able to use it.
Yeah, so your listeners probably don't know, but the Rubicon, like many, trails across the United States, was threatened to be closed because it's desolation wilderness. There's very few spots in the United States that even have this type of terrain, let alone a road going through it, right?
Yep.
So through efforts of many, many volunteers, not just these organizations, the Rubicon Trail is open, and it's a county road, and it's functioning like it always should have been functioning, and I'm really proud that it's still open. It's like 34 miles from my kitchen table I'm sitting at right now.
Yep. Excellent.
Yep.
Let's talk about your adventure in off-road. You started off with that 4Runner, and you've moved into that's the vehicle I believe that you had when I met you.
Yeah, I had that vehicle for a long time. You're exactly right.
One of the things, I'm going to regress here a little bit. I think the first time that I really, truly remember interacting with you
Was that above Little Sluice Box?
Yeah, we were.
Yep.
It was a trip into Spider, backside of Spider, and I was in that 53 M38A1 CJ5.
Yeah.
That on like 33s, I think I had at the time. And, you guys all were running 40s, 44s, boggers, swampers, whatever. And I can remember coming up this hill. I was behind you, and everybody stopped while I was on the hill. So I got like 5 feet from the top of the hill, and that old carburetor on that Oddfire V6 Buick that was in that Jeep decided that if I could have just kept moving, I'd have been fine.
Right.
and at one point you turned around and looked at me and go, "You're still behind me?" And I said, "Yeah, but it stalled and I couldn't get it restarted because I just started in gear, and it would move its way up the hill." But so you put we hooked. I think we pulled the winch cable out off of the Jeep and hooked it to you, and then you pulled me that last 5 feet up the top of the hill. But I remember that on the way out, you kept going, "You're still there? You're still there?" Because you guys just drive over all the big rocks, and I had to drive I had to pick my line.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't remember that till you said it. So I do remember all of that. And it brings me to the point of thinking about all the different levels of builds that we go through on vehicles, right? And that 4Runner saw a lot of different builds, a lot of different levels. And, to the point where I put Dana 60s under it front and rear and had it linked and, crazy stuff. And, which was supposed to be cool at the time, but I guess it's all an experience, right? So I'll tell you something really, really ironic is that was an 85 4Runner. At the time, I was one of the very first people, one of the first maybe 2 or 3 that ever bought a Powertank from Steve Sasaki from Powertank. Right?
Yep.
Now, I had an 85 4Runner at the time, and I met Steve in San Jose and went to his house and bought this Powertank. My friends are like, "What the hell is this Powertank? Why don't you just get a York, get this good compressor?" And I'm like, "Nope, this is the future, and I'm getting this." And Steve had an 85 4Runner.
Yep.
So long story short is, and we'll get into some things that have happened to me, but I saw Steve in Utah at Trail Hero this year and hadn't talked to him in a while. And he goes, "How you been?" I said, "Oh, I'm good. I sold this, sold that." And so we ended up talking about his 4Runner. Well, I just went and bought that 4Runner 2 months ago. So it's sitting out in my garage. His 1985 4Runner SR5 like mine on 35s and beadlocks and, 200-to-1 transfer cases and air lockers. And it's cool to go as far as I've gone with Jeeps and V8s and 60s and all this stuff and Toyotas and then come back to where I started.
Yep.
Which I think is, I like that story because it's my story. And I love driving this 4Runner. It's beautiful to look at, and it's 35 years old now. So
I wish I was 35.
No, it is 35. Oh, right. Yeah. No. You're not 35 either, by God.
No.
Nope.
No, when I interviewed Steve, we talked about the first time that I met him. I was up on the Rubicon. I was with Rogie, and I'm not sure who else was with us. And we came across Steve with that truck. And
it's the red 4Runner, right?
Yep, the red 4Runner. And he had I want to say he had the canvas top on it then. Maybe not.
I still got it. Yep.
But I remember seeing the Powertank that he had, and I was like, okay, what is this all about?
Yeah, right.
And had to find out. And, now I'm the owner of a number of Powertanks and got them permanently mounted in the Jeep and in the Raptor and, in the semi-truck. So they're a great option for people for airing up and down and running tools and everything.
They are a great option. But beyond that, Steve is a really good man,
top
and
notch.
just a great person. And so, this 4Runner, as you can imagine, it's Powertank set up crazy. So even the air lockers run off of a very small Powertank. which is really, really cool. So,
that's
so
a
anyway,
piece of history.
It is a piece of history. And when I was a trail hero, Rich Klein,
Little Rich.
I think that word got around. Trail Hero is a pretty big event now, you know, and
Oh yeah.
word got around that I was talking to Steve and, you know, was talking about his Forerunner. Well, Rich, some other competitors and notable rock crawlers went over to Steve and said, "You need to sell Kevin your Forerunner." And he goes, "Well, Kevin offered to buy it from me a long, long, long time ago for 13 grand." And so, I went back and talked to Steve again and said, "It was great seeing you." He goes, "Hey man, you got to come down to Galt and look at the Forerunner." I'm like, "What?" So anyway, long story short is all those people helped me arrange with Steve to come look at this and buy it. So now I have it.
That's awesome.
Yep. And there's a story that leads up to that so that people don't go, "Well, that's it, you know, you just bought a vehicle." Well, December 6th in 2017, I came home from Yosemite where I was a security consultant, still in the security business. And I came home here and I rented a room to a guy, Disco, and he was, you know, Disco.
Oh yeah.
And,
Tim Webster.
Yep. And so I went in my house and I was really tired at the time, always had the constant headaches. I went to sleep and I never woke up. So what happened is when I went to sleep, I had a hemorrhagic stroke. So there's a main artery under the top of your skull cap. When I went to sleep, I had a stroke, a hemorrhagic stroke, and mine exploded from blood pressure being extremely high. So it flooded my brain with blood. So over the course of that time, it's hard to put this all together for people to understand, but I'll just say it as simply as I can. Over the course of that time, I survived that, which is quite rare to survive a hemorrhagic stroke. What's even rarer is to not be completely crippled or partially crippled from it, from brain damage.
Right.
I don't have any of those things. What I have is I have short-term memory loss. So while that's better and I take a lot of notes, that's just the way it is. But if you saw me in person, which many of your listeners probably have, you'd never know that I had one, let alone survived it, right? True. So I only say that because I convince myself every day that this has actually happened, and it blows my mind. And so here I am at 51 and I'm retired and I'm walking around the Forerunner right now, as he's telling me about. So yeah, so that's my story. My daughter's 19. She's great. I'm retired on some money I had, and I even got Social Security disability because of what happened to me. So like I said, you would never know if you met me.
Let's talk, if you don't mind. I know it's really personal about the stroke and how I remember hearing. In fact, I think it was Rogie that told me that you'd had the stroke, and Tim at the time was your roommate.
Yep, I ran a room to Tim. Yep.
Yep, and he did he find that you were unconscious and wouldn't wake, or how did that?
No, I had this gal here at the time, Deb.
Okay.
And she came in and found me, you know, gross or not, it's what happened, throwing up in my shoes on the floor. So I was having the stroke. And she told Tim, and Tim called the ambulance, and they came. I'm very close to a couple of fire departments here. They came and took me to Placerville, and, you know, they sedated me, and then they life flighted me down to UC Davis. And then they put me in a coma for 24 days. So that helps the brain reduce swelling and pressure. They drilled 4 holes in my head and put 4 tubes in my head and 2 wires in the center of my skull to my brain to put power to your brain, to let your brain know this is what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to get power signals here and there and, you know, be alive. So while that all sounds crazy, it is as crazy as it sounds. And I'm very lucky to be here in the capacity that I am, and I'm just very lucky to be. It's a miracle to me, and my fiance doesn't like hearing that sometimes because miracle is a very strong word, but I've seen miracles in my life, and I'm one of them, you know? So say your prayers and be good to people in your whole life and be a good person and treat people right, and, you know, things can happen that are unimaginable, you know?
Right. So
They raised some money for me in Georgetown at the hotel one night, and it's the biggest party they've ever had to date at the Georgetown Hotel.
that's saying
Um,
something.
it really is, and they had another function for me at King of the Hammers, which I've raced in a few times, and raised some money for. I'm grateful for all of that so much, but I'm equally grateful to family and friends who were here for me.
Right.
It must be. I look at my situation. It must be quite odd to think about what's happened to me. If you just see me, if you just see me today, Rich, and we go to lunch, and you leave, you'd be like, "Wow, yeah, I saw Kevin today. Oh, how's he doing? Oh, he's great. He's fine," which is completely the truth. But it's just a real blessing. Is what I mean.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I like about our community, the rock crawling enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Whether they're trail wheelers or they're racers or competitors in rock crawling, business owners or whatever. There's this like big umbrella over all of us, and there's that tendency to reach out and try to help when one of us has an issue. And
it's really the truth.
Yeah, and it's good to see, especially the people that are, there's some that are that are under that umbrella that, are on the fringe of that umbrella because of maybe the way they've always presented themselves, when they're around. But there's others that that have been true, and those are the ones that everybody looks out for. So.
Yeah, well, I got looked out for, and I'm very grateful. And from veterans to friends to family, you and everybody. So I'm just, and another small miracle for me is that most people don't survive what happened with me, that happened to me, or they're crippled from it, like I said. But I have my driver's license back. I'm retired very early. I don't have a lot of money, and I don't really need a lot of money. I got vehicles, and I have some money in the bank. So, and I'm getting married next June, which is another miracle, right?
Yeah. By the way, congratulations on that.
Thanks. Arlene is wonderful. I met her of all places in Georgetown at the Georgetown Hotel.
Well, and that's where the last time I saw you and met Arlene as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, Shelley and I were having lunch there.
Yeah.
And maybe dinner, and you guys came in and joined us outside on the patio for a few minutes. So.
Okay, well, good. Was that when Bob was? No, not Bob. Was that when Lance was there and Larry McRae?
No, it was.
Okay.
I think Bob. We were waiting to meet Bob and Paula.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that just goes back to what I said earlier. Some people might say, "Well, why can't he remember that?" Because that's my short-term memory loss, right?
Right.
So it is true, and it is a disability, but that's okay. I'm alive. I don't limp, and I'm okay.
Yep.
Anyway, so all this crazy stuff happens, and what I was going to say is that people go about their lives and this and that, and pay their bills and run around and raising families and all that, but it's healthy to slow down sometimes, sit down, and breathe out and relax for a few minutes and take your stress away if you can, because life can change in just a matter of minutes. And me going to sleep and not waking up for over a year and mentally is a big thing. I've never talked to anybody that's happened to. I've met people that have had strokes, but really not like mine ever. And my dad died of a stroke, massive stroke. My mom's had one. So there's high blood pressure problems in my family. So now mine's controlled, and I'm just very fortunate,
Yep.
Very fortunate.
So I'm going to be interviewing later today. A guy on the East Coast. And
Bigelow. Doug Bigelow.
Yep. And
that's my boy.
He said to say hello.
Yeah, I love Doug.
And
I lived with Doug for a while when I was in Maryland.
yeah, that's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
You were working out there doing your cabling. Is that correct?
No, I was doing security work.
Security work. Okay.
Like always. So, I got divorced and kind of was finding my way. And I met some people on a security project that my company was doing for Amtrak. I met a company called Booz Allen Hamilton, doing that work as a contract for them in Washington, D.C. So I drove to Maryland and moved some of my stuff and ended up living there for a year. And that's where I started hanging out with Bigelow. And he's a great man and got an awesome family. And so that's where I met Doug, and I've been friends with him ever since,
Awesome.
Yep.
Did you get a chance to wheel the East when you were out there?
Yeah, we did. We did. I went with Doug many times. I had a JK at the time, a 4-door JK. Not super crazy setup, but set up enough. And we went to Roush Creek and a couple of times. And, it's a lot different on the East Coast than it is on the West Coast with public lands and four-wheeling and private property. And it's mostly private property people four-wheel on back there.
Yes.
So like Roush Creek, the Rubicon would be something that just doesn't exist on the East Coast,
True. And pretty much anything west or east of the Rockies is that.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. And, I never thought I'd be into something as long as I am with this rock crawling stuff, but, it is fun, and I enjoy rock crawling and being technical about it. And, I've never been a desert racer, and I don't mind going fast. I used to love going fast in sports cars I had, and I used to autocross and do some stuff. But I love going up in the mountains and, having a cold beverage and enjoying the quietness of, some place like the Rubicon or Fordyce. It's pretty nice.
It's a way for a lot of us that can't access the great outdoors any other way. It's like my days of backpacking are well behind me. Not just because of my size, but because of my knees are trashed,
Sure.
Those kind of things. And so it is a great way to get out and be out there. It's not all about just driving over the rocks, although that's a very fun part of the experience. But it's also getting out there, and just being around nothing.
Yeah, I put in a different context because I guess I've been overseas, and the first place I served in the Army was in South Korea for the Olympics in 1988. And so I've seen a lot of countries and communist countries and the Middle East and back here and the Gulf War and all this crap. And I come back here and I can go to the Rubicon. I can sit down at the beer tree and be absolutely quiet by myself. And it really gives you a moment to appreciate our freedom and appreciate a quiet moment and think about the important things in your life, Yep. So, and trust me, I've had more time to think about those things because of what happened to me, So.
Excellent.
It sounds crazy, but that's just the God's honest truth.
Right.
So, yeah.
So what is, besides marriage?
Yeah.
What is next for Kevin? Are you, is there anything that you want to experience that you haven't had a chance to yet? Or, what's out there?
I miss work, right? I really do. I miss work. I worked so hard for so long and traveled so much. I think I'm gonna, I plan on taking a job with, Sheriff DeAugustini, don't you?
Yep.
So the Sheriff El Dorado County here him and his wife came and helped actually serve veterans food on Wheelers for the Wounded for a couple of years.
Nice.
He'd heard what happened to me after we kind of folded up Wheelers for the Wounded and over the last couple of years. And so he reached out to me and told me that when I'm ready, I can come do some work for the El Dorado County Sheriff's Department with their Veterans Affairs group, right? Because they hire veterans. So I'm really looking forward to your question. I'm really looking forward to exploring that and doing that.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. I just believe good things happen if you're a good person. So treat people right, and you just never know what can happen, Rich. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing that and doing some more wheeling this summer. And I have a beautiful 6 acres here in Garden Valley, which is right below Georgetown. Did you ever come to my house, Rich?
I have not been.
Okay. Well, it's an older house, and but it's beautiful 6 acres. There's a creek in the backyard. I can rock crawl right in my backyard. So, so I got that stuff to do, and I got quads and, a little truck and, of course, my 4Runner. So I'll stay busy. I'm going to burn some brush today because I see it. I'm looking out my back window at this 5 acres right now. I go, you know what? I need to go do that. So.
Well, we'll let you go do that here shortly. So, Is there anything that this question I'm going to ask you to ask and come up with a question for me, if you have one? Fred Williams started this when I said, "Okay, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?" And he said, "No, but I want to ask you a question." So, is there?
Fred's a good friend of mine. He's a good man.
He is a great guy. Great guy.
Yeah.
So, is there anything any question that you would have for me that you think the listeners would like to hear about?
This is probably a good roundabout question, so that competitors, fans, manufacturers, everything would like to know, because I don't hear it talked about very often, especially with everything that's going on with COVID and this crap. Where is the next 5-year future for competitive rock crawling? Is it done? Is it become King of the Hammers oriented, which I raced into? Or will there be competitive rock crawling, probably like there never used to be, but is that going to stay around? What's the biggest tool people have to help them continue doing it? You know what I mean?
Right.
Organizations that might help. I have faith in very few of them, because it comes down to membership and money, and I'm more about action and how can we get this done with the lowest amount of money possible, Well, I want to pull people's heartstrings to make them think about the things they're going to do voluntarily, not the things they're going to get paid for. It frustrates me more than anything to hear people, well, what do I get for doing this? You know what? You don't get anything for doing this. You get to be able to take your daughter, like my daughter Marin. I'm looking out in the front driveway right now. Got a little Wrangler TJ over there on 35s and beadlocks, and she's been 4-wheeling on the Rubicon for years and years, and started out when she was a little kid that could barely walk on the granite bowl. So she gets to enjoy it. What are people going to do? What are they prepared to do to ensure that everybody else can keep 4-wheeling or enjoying the outdoors? Because I don't see a lot of it. Right. And I want to see more of it, Yeah,
I agree. I'll answer that in a couple of different ways. First, competitive rock crawling. And with my company, We Rock, we still have a 3-4 year plan. I turned 63 in March. So I've been doing this now 20 plus years. And it's wearing on the body, and just Shelley and I doing most of it. It's it's physically demanding.
It is,
plus the travel. So we eventually, I hope that there's somebody, and I think I've been talking to somebody that will take over We Rock when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And carry it on. And so I hope that happens. As far as the recreational side of it, I truly see the formula that's on the East Coast eventually making its way farther west. And that's private property, private parks, because we all know that there's certain people out there for some reason absolutely hate motorized recreation.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And that, they'll do anything they can to stop it, especially on public lands. And so as a collective group, I believe that we all need to work to save our public lands, and at an in your house level, that's either spending some time writing letters, getting behind a cause locally to keep an area open, getting with your congressman or congresswoman, and especially those that have more of a liberal agenda, to understand that, these big money-making environmental groups are not really there for the people, they're there for the money. Where our sport or our lifestyle is about people. It's about family. It's about, groups of people enjoying something that they do together. And it's we need to make our politicians that make the decisions for us on public lands understand that. And the manufacturers need to get behind that.
They've needed to get behind it forever. So,
Yep.
I look at our sport and other sports that are like a motorcycle, whatever, quads. I don't care. I got motorcycle out here in a quad and all kinds of stuff. I see a bunch of fancy commercials with shiny shocks and them jumping and mud flying everywhere and stuff. I've never seen a creative commercial that says, here we are on our new quads, or here we are in our Jeep Wrangler. And then somebody just to turn to the camera and say, we're only here because we have public lands that are open. And these public lands are open because of this and that, and because of the work that, we're doing as a corporation to ensure it stays open. So you can enjoy this vehicle and how capable it has with electric lockers front and rear, and 4-to-1 transfer case. Nobody understands rarely, few people understand why those vehicles have that capability, and they never get to see it being used in a normal commercial, right?
Yep.
And so why manufacturers won't look at that aspect of marketing and use it to their advantage, I just don't understand. Because you and I, with our experience, could film a better commercial on the Rubicon than they could with their $1 million budget.
Oh, I agree. And I think what it boils down to, and I think it's a skewed vision, and that's they're afraid they're going to lose sales if they show people having a normal good time. A group of people out on a regular trail ride. It doesn't even have to be, like on a Fordyce or, parts of the Rubicon. It could just be a dirt road. And
it could be, yeah.
They don't show that because I believe that they think that they may lose a sale or two because somebody that's against motorized recreation will say, you know what, I'm not going to buy that vehicle because of that one commercial. Yet,
yeah, well, that's sad, and that will be the undoing. Because, why isn't there commercials where I'm sitting out in my front yard and I got a soap bucket, and you look down, there's a rag, and there's my daughter Marin, and she's washing her Jeep standing next to me. It's not about mud flying. It's about, it's about interaction and emotional interaction with what you're doing and who you're doing it with. And those products can bring that to your life. Then, those manufacturers should be selling what their products can bring to people's lives beyond, do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree.
But you know what? Sexy sells, and that's not very sexy. So, sorry, it's just not, but I wish it was. So.
Yep, I agree.
Yep.
Well,
that
was a good question.
Speaking of it is a good question. Speaking of We Rock, I'll always come help you.
I understand that.
Wherever you are, I'll fly out there. I'll do whatever. Kevin, can you come work in Arizona this weekend? Sure, I'll come work. It's cheap for you and it's fun for me.
I will absolutely keep that in mind. Once the season starts, I get into such a, I don't know, a groove or a mindset where it's just, living in that particular moment and not seeing, all of that. So going into a new area every other week or so, it's all about, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to get set up? And I don't always think that way. So, thank you for the reminder.
I know what I'm talking about a little bit when it comes to courses, cones, and time, and reverses, and all these types of things. And I love it because I'm a competitor by nature. So, I think being competitive and learning to follow just some simple rules and win and be a winner are the best life lessons, right?
Agreed.
So, and we're doing that. You're doing that every time you have an event, Rich.
Yep.
So keep at it.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. And
right.
Again, thank you so much for coming on board with Conversations with Big Rich and opening up your personal life to everybody out there in the four-wheel drive industry. And I wish you and your future wife an awesome life. And I know I will see you the next time I come into Northern California. I will come by and visit for sure.
Yeah, we'll hook up for sure. And I look forward to seeing you. And you're of course, always welcome here. So
appreciate that, Kevin. Again,
all right,
thank you.
Okay, my friend. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.